Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend DG Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
Me hearties, and welcome once again to Full Stream Ahead. I be your Captain Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is me first mate and skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Welcome, Mozz. In a galaxy far, far away, in a world where there are capes, lunatics, and many gods and many monsters, there is a planet called Perich, a Perich society that gathers at Rix Road to say goodbye, and one man is there, Cassian Andor, to pay his respects.
And 30 other people are there hoping to catch him.
Yeah, well, you know, man has made enemies. Season 1, Episode 12, Rix Road, Cassian returns home to Perich, a tinderbox that is experiencing a spark of rebellion. Our director this week is Benjamin Caron. Tony Gilroy and George Lucas have the writing credits on here. Tony Gilroy gets the written by and created by this week. George Lucas, he just created all of Star Wars. Thank you very much. Yeah. So this is, and I do want to make a point real quick about how little happens, but also how much happens in this.
Oh, I think it's everything. It's the birth of the public getting on the side of the philosophy, right? Like it was a philosophy, but nobody wanted to believe it. Nobody thought it was possible. And then something happens, and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? It's a historic moment.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. And actually, I do want to give a quick apology last episode, because I had thought, because they had said she was in the bricks, I had thought they'd already had the funeral.
Oh.
See, that was my big confusion in that, because I'm like, why is he telling him all this? They already had the funeral, because they were talking about the funeral last episode. And right. I'm assuming that, but I guess it takes time to process you into a brick.
Right.
So the whole thing about being built into a brick, that takes time. And, it's interesting. And it's interesting because there's a parallel to this in what we saw in the heist episode and the native population asking for their permissions to do things and this and that and the other. And, the Empire basically saying, we're going to have you do this, we're going to have you do that, we're going to have it do this way, this is, and they're building out their plan to box them into a canyon so they can find Cassian. And what happens is that the natives just ignore the Empire. That they start early, they start when they said they were going to do. They bring as many people as they said they were going to bring. And honestly, the real power of this, to me, is that marching band. Just the two convergent bands. And, it's like the song American Pie, when the players tried to take the field, the marching band refused to yield, And it is just this idea about how when you have that organized troupe of musicians, they actually have a weird power over people because first off, they're clearly not violent. So, like, when you use violence
against them,
doesn't look
that way. But when you can assemble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have something powerful. Then we're talking about collective power.
Exactly,
because they are into letting you assemble. No, but they let it happen because Dedra wanted to draw Cassian out. So that's why she's like, no, we're gonna let it happen. It's like, we can't let this happen. No, I know, it's not in the rules, but we're gonna let it happen because it serves a bigger purpose. We're gonna catch this guy that's gonna lead us to access. So we're gonna let it happen.
Well, I think the idea is that, and this is maybe even part of the problem for the Empire, is that you have to let it happen.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to let this poor old lady not have her final request to be held up and put away? She was a member of our society. You're going to treat the whole society like this? And, you get something in that in her speech at the end, which I do love. But we can get to that in a bit.
What I thought was really interesting about this episode is that it gives validation for every bad guy like Commodus who couldn't kill Maximus, right? The mob. Everybody's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You should have killed him. He's like, no. He can't let the mob get riled up. And this has become too central a person, too central an idea, too central a story that if you mess with it, you risk the danger of the mob turning against you. And this lends credence to like why sometimes you can't kill somebody and martyr them. Right.
Oh, exactly.
And we watch it happen. If you let it happen, it's going to have tremendous consequences. And these are the consequences every villain has ever been afraid of.
Exactly. Because every empire is held together by spit and baling wire. In fact, every government, really. You don't even have to be an evil empire. It's worse for them. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're a democracy, people don't want to necessarily overthrow anything because, there are regular elections. People feel, for some extent or another, their voices are heard. Maybe not as loudly as they'd like, maybe not as well as they'd like, but they do understand voices are being heard. And the biggest problem they have is, they're more morons than people, That's effectively what democracy is. It is recognizing that there are more morons than people. And so we are pushing the morons in the right direction, but it's going to take time to get them there. And apologies to all morons out there. And honestly, and this is what I'll say about it. You think I'm talking about my East Coast liberal elite ideas, but honestly, everybody in the Midwest feels like, we can't do everything we want because there's more morons than people, but we can push ourselves and we can push our ideas. And that's the idea, is you get this pushing effort on the two sides of things, and they're going to circle around to what works.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to recognize that there's morons on either side. Mm-hmm. And to say Absolutely. That we should monitor ourselves just as much to not become morons, because it's very easy to become a moron.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I say there's more morons than people. See, that's the thing. The joke of it is, it's like, every time someone makes a statement about white supremacists and conservatives say, why are you so mad at conservatives? It's like, I didn't say conservatives. I said white supremacists. Why do you assume I'm talking about you? And
because people on one side often conflate the two really conveniently when it's convenient.
Well, I guess that's an argument. Although at the same time,
what I'm saying, but that's where the image comes from. That's why people expect you to mean one thing when you might not mean another, because. Yeah. Reflections.
And but again, it's, to me, here's the thing. When people talk about pedophiles, I never feel offended because I'm very certain I'm not a pedophile. And so, but when people start accusing people of stuff, that's stuff I worry about. And when people start getting mad about stuff that it wasn't directed at them, I'm thinking, you've got a guilty conscience. And I think that's what that's about. But that's democracy. This is totalitarianism, which is a much more efficient, but also more precarious space, because you only have so many stormtroopers. You can only have so many droids. You can only have so many whatevers. And there's a lot of wiggly little people around that you're trying to control.
That sort of reminds me of the situation in the Ukraine with Russia. Just, their philosophy has always been just throw soldiers at the problem until you solve it. It's very much like what you're talking about here.
Exactly.
And this little ragtag community is banding together and trying to fight the Empire. That's so interesting.
And you know what? And it's having exactly how that always plays out. Because anytime you try to force your will on a people through force, people will react with equal and opposite force. And they will find ways that you may move them to the left, but now they're behind you,
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like trying to dominate by force is always a failed plan. The minute you say, we'll bomb them into submission, at most you're going to maybe get, peace for a few years.
Yeah, but the underbelly has strains of this virus of pain that is going to mutate over the next couple of decades, and you will reap what you sow.
And to be fair, that's exactly what happened the last time the Soviet Union fell. And that's the big problem here. It's that instead of using guile and wit and practicality to sway people to their cause, which is how you win. You could, Russian nationalism, there are Ukrainians who are Russian nationalists, although, of course, there's a lot of Ukrainians who also remember, the Ukrainian genocides. And so, but you could use this, and this was arguably what they were trying to do. And then, effectively you could do this, but then of course Ukrainians just started to push back, started to have their own ideas of who they were, and also really did not want to continue on with this idea of Russian. They were willing to have a relationship with Russia. They did not want to be considered Russia's sphere of influence. They didn't want to be considered Russia's lapdog.
Right. I mean, like a lot of food is grown in that area, and they wanted to be for their people, not to,
Well, I mean, no, they want to trade with whoever will give them money on it.
Trade with, but not say like our food belongs to Mother Russia, right? Like
well, exactly.
It belongs to our people.
And that's the thing. It's like, they were willing to have the Crimean, so the Russian naval bases on Crimea, but the Russians decided they needed to invade Crimea and take Crimea instead. And you know what the problem with that is? Is that you probably could have continued on having your spot there for as long as you wanted to. But the minute you start pushing it, now you've got a problem.
Right.
And it's roughly the equivalent of the U.S. saying, we need to go attack Cuba to maintain Guantanamo Bay. Whereas having Guantanamo Bay on its lease and paying the Cuban government on a regular basis, it's humiliating to the Cubans, but they actually do well to allow it because it solves the problem. It's just easier to let it exist,
right,
than to force it out of existence. And that's where, but the whole thing with Putin is he wants to rebuild his image of the Soviet Empire, and it's failing. And just like the Empire is failing. And it doesn't look like it from the outside because they're killing a lot of people and they're very strong. But the fact that they're killing a lot of people and they're very strong doesn't actually build their empire. It just shows that, as Princess Leia said to Grand Moff Tarkin, the greater you clench your fist, the more sand will slip through your fingers. Because you can't control people. And you think about a moment like this, like if they had just let them march, let the old lady have her big speech via digital, and let her thing be put up, everyone would have gotten back to work the next day. Because she even makes this point in her speech.
Yeah, I think they were planning to fight.
You can't fight if no one's there to fight you.
No, there were tons of soldiers there. They were planning.
No. But that's my point. That's my point. Well, yeah, the one guy was going to probably throw a bomb, but you know what? He's going to throw a bomb into a bunch of Ferich supporters.
No, he was going to do it to the soldiers.
Well, yes, because the soldiers were there.
Right.
If you don't have the soldiers there,
right,
there's no one to bomb. And
no, of course not. Well, then there wouldn't be anything. But like, since the soldiers were there, I think the marching band was planning to set off a fight.
Oh yeah, well, no, they were planning to set off the fight, and the best way to avoid a fight is to not show up for it.
Yeah.
Because what's the actual. What's the actual, and I mean, this of course is part of the problem with the fact that, the Empire has already put their foot here.
Yeah, but I think this just shows how Deidre is more like Cyril than she wants to admit. She's making the same damn mistake he made a little while ago all over again.
Honestly, the parallels are even exact, where it is even, it's that the most of the damage is caused by the Empire's munitions. It's like that one little bomb, which, and honestly, I gotta love the fact that no one uses shrapnel. Like your big hope is that you'll actually kill someone with flying debris from glass or brick that's around. Yeah. But like no one thinks to let's put like a little razor wire in here and actually make this a deadly bomb. But no, it's just concussion grenades, just blasts. It can kill you. I mean, because we do see they do use, plasma guns and they do kill people. But, that more targeted killing is not as devastating as actual shrapnel in a bomb. But shrapnel in a bomb is also indiscriminate. And I guess if you're in close quarters and you don't want to kill the wrong people, because that is how you cause problems. So I guess in its own way, one can argue that dropping concussion bombs is more useful, because if no one has a family member who died in it because of shrapnel or lost a leg because of it, then maybe things get easier. But all in all, I just feel that the Empire put themselves in an untenable situation. And to put it to you simply, and it is because, and really what happened was, the private security people went a whole hog on Ferich, which they should never have done. Because, and this is the thing that the woman says in her speech, we're Ferich, and we have always been more than happy to just build for whoever wanted it, And, let's be clear here, the Empire is not that old. So they were building for the Republic, which was corrupt as heck also. They were building for the Empire. They were building for whoever wanted stuff built, because they left us alone. We did our jobs and we moved on, and we didn't care about it because it didn't affect us. But once the private security people start going too crazy, then the Empire has to come in to restore order because the private security failed. And now you've got just everyone, having to say, we need to be here to push back.
And this was the point that Cyril's boss was making in the first episode. Like, man, you got to let some things go. We have like a living organism that we're trying to maintain. We can't put our focus on one tiny thing that bothers us. Because it's going to have wide-reaching implications, and we're not going to be able to administer the kind of control that we want if we let little pustules of violence escalate like this. And that's what you're doing. And he was smart enough to see that. But short-sighted, narrow-minded Cyril causes, it's like, as much as people want to say that, Cassian was the reason for all this, he wasn't. Cyril was the reason for all of this.
Well, yeah, and really, it does come down to that, and that's sort of the thing. And again, you go back to that, where the guy makes this point. Look, these people were killed. They were killed outside a bar, which we're not supposed to have. Where these things happen, which requires money they're not supposed to have, and all these things. Like, as near as I can tell, it was a bar brawl that went wrong.
Right. And if we're going to talk about truth, right? You're saying, Cyril's saying, oh, but we're going to lie to people and say blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's one lie. But your lie, your version is also a lie, because that's not what happened. These guys probably deserved to die. They were messing with, that's what you get. In the jungle, if that's the law of the jungle, I'm bigger than you, I'm going to eat you. That's the way things work. And it's like, and if you're going to say, oh, one of ours was killed, you're propagating a lie too.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And it is that idea of the one of ours. Cause that's the thing. Cause but you see, that's the Ouroboros of the Empire. The reason the Empire can maintain its troops is because they feel that there's an in and an out. There's a group that is in the Empire, and we protect those of us in the Empire. And if you're out of the Empire, you are those who serve the Empire, whereas we work for the Empire. It's like, and this is this idea that, feeling that being a servant of the Empire gives you authority over those who merely, are in the Empire as whatever they are, the workers of the world, and that you can't lay your hand on me because I'm in the Empire. It's like, that's not how it works, man.
Yeah. You're not important. The structure is important.
Exactly. The Empire is important.
Right.
If you actually cared about the Empire, you'd be trying to subtly maintain all these things, just like the old guy at the ISS, the OSS, the secret police.
We're healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
Healthcare workers. We just maintain. That's our job. And that's why those guys were in positions of power, and morons like Cyril and Deidre are scrambling and scurrying like rats.
Yeah, well, because they're trying so hard to make their name.
Yeah,
because they're
barking up the wrong tree. You know what I mean?
Well, ironically, they are barking up the right tree, but they're also making the missteps that are going to happen.
Right. No, what I mean is the way to get to the top is not by chasing this philosophy of the minutia of it meaning something. No, the way they reach those positions of power is the understanding that you can't, barefist every situation. You have to have a little tact, and the overall structure of things is more important than little things that pop up that might make you feel a certain way.
Well, exactly. And this is actually where you hit this nail on the head. And actually, there's the argument to be made. Everybody is over assuming how powerful Cassian Andor is. Because they think Cassian Andor blew up the whole town. And you see that when they first come back, and he's like, everyone blames you for this. And all this, it's like, I didn't do anything, man. I was trying to sell a fuzzbuster. And, I had a fuzzbuster. This guy said he wanted to buy a fuzzbuster. Suddenly, he's going, no, you're going to help the rebellion and then do all that. And it's like, dude, I just wanted to sell a fuzzbuster. You know? And then everything goes nuts. I mean, really, what's his name? Stellan Skarsgård is the guy who really caused all the problems, including just in the sense that, wanting to kill Cassian because he saw him. And it's like, and that's even after Cassian maintains the deal, gives him back the necklace, does everything he asked, and still you want to kill the guy just because he saw you? It's like,
that was my favorite thing about the Marva speech. The effect it had on the people was beautiful and cathartic and joyous. But watching Luthen stand there and listen to this speech and watching those emotions dance on his face, like so much was happening. And to me, it felt like so much of his life was smoke and mirrors. So much of his life was pretending and falseness and conniving and cleverness. And he'd lost touch of truth, right? He'd become this thing that he needed to be in order for the rebellion to have a fighting chance, but he'd lost touch with why he was fighting to begin with, right? Like being willing to sacrifice Cassian, being willing to sacrifice Krieger, those things bothered him, and he needed something to connect him to the truth. He was getting away from his humanity, and then he hears this, right? This beautiful speech that reminds him of why he's fighting, and he watches the effect it has on the people. And it's like, man, this is why I got into the game to begin with. And that moment just like re-energized him. It refueled him. And that was beautiful, man. To watch a guy that was at the end of his wits, you know, had barely nothing left in every interaction he ever had. He was on the edge of everything at all times. And now he's filled with this feeling like, I can do this. I can do this forever. You know, it's like Captain America. I can do this all day. It gave him that feeling. Oh my God, that was beautiful.
You know, I did find it interesting during the riot how really chaotic it got, and how and I know I'm not as good at with names as you are. Our female villain gets her hat knocked off.
Deirdre. Yeah.
Deirdre, yes. Deirdre and Cyril. That's right.
Yeah.
Because, I was going to actually ask you whether or not you think that Marva and Stellan Skarsgård's character, do you think they knew each other? Luthen. Because that's the thing. I wonder about that. And I've wondered about that the whole time. Because part of me kind of thinks that that's how he knew who Cassian was. Because he was in contact with Marva. That they knew each other from back in the day, and that it's part of my belief in that Luthen doesn't have to go to this funeral to kill Cassian. He has people on the scene to kill Cassian. You know, his choice to be there, I think, has to do with Marva. I think that they.
Right. I mean, because he knew Bix, and Bix was communicating with him. And I'm sure he only got in touch with Bix because Marva was there.
Exactly. I think that there's probably.
So he just came to pay respects to another worthy soldier.
Exactly.
That's beautiful too, man.
I mean, that's a fan theory, but I kind of have to believe that. I have to believe that Marva was his person. Bix, you know, it's interesting in this because you do see that she does have a bit more PTSD than I thought from the first time.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah. I saw.
This was Reek all the way.
I don't think it's as bad as Reek.
No, but it was in the same vein where she did not want to let go of her chains. Her chains had become her comfort. In the same way, like even when he had the opportunity to kill, I forget his name, he couldn't do it. Because he was so shell shocked that he would rather be in the safe space than risk any further pain.
Yeah, and that's a fair cop, you know. Well, but it's like they say, if you're going to come for the king, you better not miss, you know. And that's the thing. And part of wearing someone down is letting them know, you know, I'm gonna give you opportunity for you to take me out because, you know, if you miss, you know how much worse it's gonna be, you know. But you know, and I was never quite clear on how gone she was because at first I thought she doesn't even recognize Cassian, but I think she does.
Yeah.
And when she's in the thing in the transport at the end, and she says Cassian will find us. The first time I thought she's saying that as if Cassian isn't there, but it strikes me that no, she's saying this to the others. Yeah. Don't worry, Cassian will find us.
Because he came and got her, and that was like, oh my God, like now she believes he will. Like, no, he told me he's gonna be here. That was really nice.
That was really nice. I also did love our little droid in this. Which is like, I didn't get it's like, I didn't get the chance to see you, which is one of those weird things because obviously, well, you're seeing me now. It's like, yeah, but we haven't talked, man, you know? And it says, I'll be back. He's like, yeah, you always say that.
Yeah.
That little red droid. Oh, yeah. I love that little malfunctioning droid. He is such a heart. And I'm gendering him, but you know, they gave him a deeper voice. So we're going to assume.
I mean, anyone's free to assume what they want. That's fine too.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's true. You know what it is? I don't want to call it an it because you know it's
right.
It's a droid.
Yeah, and for the work he did and the sacrifice,
yeah,
you know,
you know,
he deserves more than that.
You know, R2D2 gets all the glamour, but you know, it's the little droids, who did what they could. They deserve to have their little recognition too. Uh, uh, but yeah, Deirdre gets trampled
and saved.
And saved. But what's interesting is she gets knocked down, and it looks like they're attacking her. But once she's down, they just leave her. And I found that really interesting.
I guess maybe because when you're in the fray, if something doesn't present an immediate threat to you, it's sort of like your peripheral. Now, because more important to your survival instinct is the people that are still standing, and you have to sort of like, okay, who's still standing?
Well,
maybe it forces you to ignore someone that's on the floor.
I actually think it's a little more interesting. To me, it's that her hat got knocked off. Once her hat gets knocked off, you don't know who she is anymore.
But she's just uniform, like it, you know.
Well, no, she's wearing a trench coat, but it's not really a clearly differentiated trench coat. Because she has the uniform underneath the coat, but she is wearing the coat. Right. And because she's wearing the coat, but she loses the hat. I think another blonde in the mix.
Perich have been seeing these spies wear this silly ass costume that is not working. They knew who everyone was.
Yeah, but I also
in the fray, I guess she could have gotten lost.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and I think that, and you know, part of me, you know, and it's like, you know, how what is the just? Honestly, being trampled by the mob you were trying to control is probably it's a poetic end, but getting saved by Cyril, that is, I wonder what these two are up to next season, honestly.
Oh my God. I can't, that moment was so interesting and so tense. Like she's sitting there going, I can't believe I got saved by this idiot. And I'm forcing her to realize, oh my God, I am him. And she's so disappointed in herself. But at the same time, she's like, yeah, but he's a kindred spirit. So like all these things, that was such an interesting little moment between the two of them.
Yes, exactly. And just the fact that, you know, says, I guess I should thank you. It says, you don't have to thank me. Because it's like, this is for the glory of the Empire. You know, I have bad ability to see people, like to recognize people in the aftermath scenes. I think there's a scene of his fat guy friend who was there.
Yeah, sitting on the floor, dejected.
Just drinking his whiskey. You know, he's down, but you know.
That's true.
It's not the first time he's been knocked down, and he's like, you know.
And much like Bix said, oh, he'll find us. He knows something's going to come up, and Cyril is too ambitious. He goes, no, he knows he pitched his hooks into the right horse, right?
Yeah.
He's like, Cyril will have some work for me soon.
Exactly. There's places to go. He's always going to be there. And moving throughout it, you know, I like that. What is interesting is the bartender who tried to turn in Cassian. Because in that same scene, there is a guy who has the same build and hair as the bartender, sort of staggering off from the scene. He's got the pointy hair, but you don't see his face. So I don't know if that's him or it's not him. But it would be interesting if he actually survived too. That, you know.
I thought we saw him die, didn't we?
Well, we saw him knocked down.
Okay.
And we saw Cassian see him on the floor. But again, like I said, it's not like there's shrapnel in these bombs. Right. You know, if he didn't take a shard of glass to a vital organ. I
imagine though that the seismic force of those things can do some internal damage to soft tissue.
Well, but he was in a building a distance away.
All right, yeah.
You know, how lethal any of these weapons are is it's really open for debate. You know, because truth be told, when they're coming into this, they're not really coming in because, to the Empire's credit, they probably weren't coming in there to fight or to kill. This was smoke bombs,
right? A show of force,
yeah. You know, get people to run away,
right?
Not get people to, because you see, they even hold off on firing on the crowd with the laser guns until it really gets out of hand.
Yeah.
So one imagines that the bombs that they brought were actually mostly concussion and
right.
So
Kind of
I want
reminds me of Braveheart, where like the British Army shows up expecting a surrender, not expecting to fight, and William Wallace goes and says, "What are you doing? Going to pick a fight?" Right?
Yeah.
And they came to fight. They came prepared, and they just the emotional difference between those two sets of people and what they were ready and prepared to do in the moment was too great to overcome.
Yeah. But I do, and along those lines, I do wonder if that character is going to come back. Because if he is, that's the thing. Cassian doesn't know that he was there betraying Cassian.
Huh.
He just knows he was in the place, but he could have been arrested. He could have been, unless someone wrote down, this is the guy who was trying to sell out Cassian.
Yeah.
No one knows. And when he wanders away, suddenly he's wandered away and he's back.
Yeah, but
in
I
the
think
crowd.
he's in the same position as Cyril's fat friend. It's like he's useless right now until he runs into another situation where he can be useful.
Yeah.
And I think he's not a factor on the board, even if he is alive at the moment.
Well, it's interesting because what he has established for himself is what you can. So remember the Netflix series and the character Turk, and Turk. He's the one. He was the I forget who played him too. He was the black guy who was like the guy who had all the knowledge on the street. So he talked to Daredevil.
In the Netflix Marvel shows. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot
the
to say
gun
the
dealer.
Marvel series.
I thought you were saying there was a Netflix show named Turk. I was like, I haven't heard of this.
Oh, there would be a great show if they made a
show. Absolutely.
But Turk's the gun dealer and all that kind of stuff. And he's the kind of guy who has a foot in both worlds.
Right.
He talks to the heroes, he talks to the villains, and he's just there to see who's got the better deal.
I just didn't like him, so I kind of, in my mind, he died. Good for him.
Yeah, well, and honestly, it's just the fact that a similar build and similar hair.
Yeah.
Walking past that scene of the fat guy drinking, and just so I can say right now, it's nice to have representation on TV for fat guys drinking. What I'll say is, it makes my mind wander. What will they do? Because, as they say, if there's no body, if there's no declaration of death, you can't assume anyone ever dies.
Yeah.
The emperor returns somehow. That's the thing. It's like, well, I guess, sure, why not?
Yeah.
It helps the story. So that kind of thing is interesting to me, especially because he was going to betray Cassian. Because in and of itself, I did not necessarily know that there was a reason to betray Cassian. But, sure enough, he did.
I mean, it just seemed like it was motivated by money, right? It was just...
Yeah, that's the same thing that motivates Cassian. Yeah, he's looking for his... What he was looking for, he was looking for a way off Ferrix. And I get the feeling that there's a lot of people that just want to get off Ferrix. Because it is a wet, dirty, industrial planet.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can have a life on Ferrix, but it is so Allentown,
Like there's so much world out there, right?
Exactly. And you just want to get away and you want to get out. And so I get that too, So it's interesting what really is going on with his motivations. Because at the end of the day, he also may still be annoyed about, the whole Fuzzbuster deal that went down and wrong. And, he's like, because that's the thing. That's the truest thing about Star Wars is that at the end of the day, whether it's the Republic or it's the Empire, it's still a bunch of cops trying to control things. And it's not always conducive to a businessman's line of work, which again is the other thing we get in this, which is the gangster's introduction of his son to Mon Mothma.
Now, do you think they talked to the daughter about what was happening and the daughter understood the political implications of that introduction?
I think, well, she's a teenage girl, and
but she is very much for the cause. Like, she prays. She's one of those, like, she's been sold hook, line, and sinker on the cause. So, like, the cause of
the Empire,
families and their tradition. I think she was already primed for this conversation and to be about it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's entirely her perspective. I think she's just happy to have something to do, and not for nothing. That's the thing. If you are the daughter of a senator, your mother's railing against the government. It's fine, but at the same time, she's in the government,
right?
And it is this whole reality of what is the government. What does the government do? Because, as we say, whether it's the Empire or it's the Republic, the government's doing a lot of shady stuff.
Right.
And really what the argument is that there's a degree more of shadiness in the government under the Empire than under the Republic. And the wheels of democracy are not as powerful as they used to be. That, we're still having all the problems of the government's overreach and seeking to control. Yeah, that's the thing, Although the counter argument is that actually under the Empire, the prisons were much, much better run. You had much cleaner prisons. The food,
Although we'll say the prisons we got to see, the people that were able to do that kind of work had the privilege of only being electrocuted once a day.
But you get the idea that obviously there was a perspective there, because they even made the point that that those of you returning to a prison will probably be impressed at how much nicer this is. We're not beating you down every day. We have eliminated the sociopaths from our payroll. And
they're just working on the different prisons. Like everybody got farmed out when they got caught. Or you're going to go to this prison. You look like you could build stuff. We're going to put you in the stuff. We're building stuff. You're going to break rocks and, you're going to,
and that's a fair cop too. We don't know what the other prisons are.
Right.
But it did seem in its own way to be the idea that there was a mass prison reform under the Empire. Because the Empire knew that this was cheap, that this was effectively free labor.
Right.
The problem happened, of course, with it when they stopped honoring the social contract. Because the social contract was you commit a crime, you do your time, you get to go home. And the minute you start violating that social contract of how are we establishing this exchange, that's when the Empire starts to fall apart. And that is why the Empire falls apart. Because just being the Empire, just having, Darth Sidious in charge of the Empire, doesn't change much of the Empire. There were slaves in the Republic. Actually, we don't know that there are slaves in the Empire. That's always one of those interesting questions to me. Because the only people we know were slaves in the Empire were people that were slaves before and bought their freedom. Because you only actually meet one. Now there may other be slaves, but it is an interesting thing that we do see slaves both post-Empire and pre-Empire, but very few slaves during the Empire, with the one exception being Leia, which we call a slave girl, but really she was just a prisoner of Jabba. That's a slightly different thing because obviously he is a criminal, and being a criminal, he is not bound by what the laws of the Empire are.
Or he doesn't represent the rest of society.
And again, this is why but he is also the guy who's selling the guns to the people of the rebellion, because the rebellion needs guns, and the mafia is more than happy to sell you guns.
Hey, somebody's got to.
There's money, we're going to sell it to you, And they don't like the idea of the government getting up in their business and saying, hey, stop selling all those guns to these people. Because the mafia's going to say, what? Did you want those guns? Would you like to offer us more money? We're more than happy to sell them for a higher price. But,
Yeah.
I'm really excited for Andor season 2.
I think the one other scene that I thought was really, really great was when Mon Mothma and her husband are riding back in their little taxi with the spy as their driver. She starts putting the story out into the mix. Oh, you're gambling, blah, 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 blah. And you see him listening. And just to have an extra little hedge her bets against the missing money, to make it sound like it was his gambling debts that were causing that 400,000 credits that were missing.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool.
That was subtle. See, I didn't even miss that. I actually thought he was gambling again.
Oh, and he might well be. But she is putting the feelers out to the spy ears that there is this problem. And then, like, okay, maybe they'll think that that's where the money went. I thought that was really, really cool.
And, of course, that's, one of the other problems of the general Imperial spy class in general is that, people know they're being spied on.
Right. And then if you're predictable, I can take advantage.
Exactly. And of course, that's the thing. It's just, it's counter Intel Pro all over again. Yeah. Just a bunch of spies at the meeting, each trying to get the other one to overthrow the government.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, is there anyone here who isn't a spy? Yeah. Anyone here who isn't a spy? Okay. Or as Tom Lehrer once said about his time at Los Alamos, it's like, I was employed there as a spy. As you know, the staff there was made up almost exclusively of spies. Oh, goodness. Okay, Mozz, any final thoughts on this whole...
Oh, yeah, the post-credit scene finally letting us know what they're building at Narkina 5.
Which, I think...
everybody knew, but still, it's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, it's like, you can tell them. They know.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see. It was a nice big shot. It's our happy little droids building a Death Star.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how far along it was. Obviously, I guess you got to build the frame before you can,
attach
put put in all the inside stuff. So, so there is stuff that's going to be about, before we get to our fully operationalness. And of course, you gotta
have a shark before you can put freaking laser beams on it.
Exactly. And it's nice that they're building it out, and, and that's from the first movie. So that was fun. But I found it interesting that we knew that's what it was going to be, and I think it was just based on the way the part they were building was designed, that I don't even think we ever saw that part in the Death Star, but just somehow you knew that's that Death Star aesthetic.
Yeah,
that's what they're building here, and they're building a lot of this exact same part. So
I love that. What I really loved about it was they really got you comfortable with the mass of this thing, the weight of this thing. You felt like you got intimate knowledge of this little piece that they kept building, and it was massive, and it took 8 people to lift and move around and and then they take you to the shot, and it's like this tiny little piece of it. I thought that was like a really cool to give us like an intrinsic spatial sense of this thing, and then use that to make us feel how big this thing that they were building was.
Yeah, although I gotta say, the entire planetary, the moon-sized weapon, because not for nothing, let's be clear, you can probably only build like 1 or 2 of these. Like, you're not going to have a fleet of Death Stars.
Right. Imagine, though. Holy moly.
It would be cool, man. That's a threat for the Borg.
Oh, my God.
You always see that meme of the Death Star versus the Borg. And it's like, you know what? I think the Borg's in trouble here, because that's a pretty powerful weapon. And, but it's such a one shot.
Yeah.
And it's such just a weapon of terror like a nuclear arsenal, arguably. But it's also like, I don't think that is a cost-effective way to maintain empire.
It definitely is a legacy dynamic from the from the 60s, or the way we thought about war or weapons back then.
Yeah, we just need one super weapon.
Yeah.
and of course the problem with that is just that unless someone blows it up, and then even if you had two, it's like. Just on everything about it, it's just like you really realize how that was the real senatorial boondoggle. It's like, what's the Empire charge? So it's like, I think I know how I can make some money off of this. Let's talk the Empire into a planet destroying.
Oh, a giant construction project.
Yes, a Hoover Dam for the galaxy.
That's great. That's great.
See, that's the real evil of the Empire, is the senators that stayed and say, so we can just vote on anything we want now? Can I give my cousin Sal a prison to build stuff, man? Can I just, like, what can we do to just really build the Empire now?
Yeah.
And in its own way, those are the real heroes. The internal corruption of the Empire, of all the people taking their cut.
Yeah.
All right, Mozzie. So, Mozz, so people know, if they liked this show, Andor, if they want to talk to us about what show we should talk about next, Willow, Powerless, Welcome to Chippendales, any number of shows, I would like them to know that they can write to us at CapesandLunatics@gmail.com. Call us at 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES to give us their voice statements of what they like. If they don't want to type it out, we will play or read either on the air if you want us to, because we really want that community in our society. Likewise, why don't you go buy some merch, like our T-shirts or phone cases or mugs at Linktree, linktr.ee/CapesandLunatics, all spelled out. Also, while you're there, check out all of our other shows, including the Salty and Peppery podcast over on Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks, as well as Super Connectivity with Mozz and myself, and many others. Also, give us some money if you'd like to. You can just send us money through Cash App, or become a Patreon and vote on all of our super secret Patreon content. And if people do all that and they still want to talk to you personally, Mozz, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And likewise, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, where our mothers and our fathers once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And follow me on the Twitters. I live tweet things when I find the thing that calls me to tweet it. At Charlie Esser, that's CHARLIE ESSER. Look for the two E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing.
Thank you, Mozz. All right, me hearties, you've come to the end of the tragic tale, or hopeful tale, of Cassian Andor. Come back again next week as we once again sail full stream ahead. Arrgh.